because I was on vacation and then I had to play 2 weeks of catch up, and this is the first week that I've actually had nothing to do for the last 2 days of the week. So I think most of you guys know how this works by now. Put your questions in chat, I will answer them. I do see a lot of familiar faces, so thanks for tuning in, guys. Couple of things that went down last month is that I started taking Finasteride. Do not recommend. Basically, between that and a bit of depression, we can talk about this later, but I just crashed my libido, and it's finally getting back to normal after 3 weeks without Finasteride. So if you don't actually need Finasteride, do not take it. It is so damn simple to get it, and that's what's really scary about it, is that I got this Finasteride prescription within 15 minutes without talking to anyone. So for those who are uninitiated, Finasteride blocks DHT. DHT is what causes male pattern baldness. So if you lower DHT, you will keep your hair. It could regrow on its own, but most of the time you got to add some like minoxidil, Rogaine on the temples or whatnot to fill it in. The problem is Finasteride blocks all DHT everywhere. So like your sex drive is part of DHT, and that's what fucked me up. Like I went from being horny almost all day to being horny not at all for 2 weeks, and it was kind of jarring. I just wanted to make that like a PSA here. Another PSA is the Apex Stealth, and I talked about this on quite a few streams already, is available for purchase at Peak Male Physique and MassiveNovelties.com. So you can check it out there. There will be more content on this and how to use this and the best practices and everything like that. It's just been, quite frankly, a nightmare since I got back. So, all right. And hello, Red. Hello, Forsaken. Hello, Christopher. So, Tula, you're asking me about your routine. You do this practically every time. And I'm just going to give you this. If it's working, you will know. I cannot really tell you if it's going to be good or not, just based off of what's in chat now, because it's going to need to be like a 2-month process to see if you actually gain, right? Skimming over it, it might be a little low on pressure because I think you've been here for a year now, and that would be the main thing I would change. But if you're saying you're a half an inch longer stretch flaccid, then you're definitely on the right path, and I gotta quiet down some of these messages. Okay, quit Teams, quit Telegram. All right. So, Jamar, if you had to formulate the ultimate length-only routine and girth-only routine for maximum gains in the shortest amount of time, in your opinion, what would it be? So, I don't like putting time scales on anything. Additionally, these are already in my books, peakmalephysique.com, but it really comes down to you need 2 different things for length. You need some kind of high tension to actually break down the tissue, and then some kind of low tension, potentially, to keep the tissues elongated, and that releases a different kind of enzyme that's responsible for shape change. So if you get an ample supply of both, you're practically making it the most optimal way, hormonally speaking, to cause penis enlargement, because you're causing tissue hyperplasia with the high tension, and then you're causing the tissue to actually become malleable with the low tension. So that would be the starting point. Now, time effectiveness comes down to how long you've done PE. You will only need to do length for 15 to 20 minutes a day when you're first starting out. And that could go for anywhere from 6 to 8 months, realistically speaking, depending on how much weight you're using. Then, intermediate people, it's going to be like 30 to 40 minutes. More advanced people, 40 minutes to an hour. I usually do about 30 to 40 minutes of length right now, but I'm also, trying different things. I'm also a relatively fast responder. So, ideally, you'd use a high tension extender from anywhere from 20 to 40 minutes with weight between 5 to 10 pounds in the interval protocol, which is going to be like every 1 minute. you release it and then put it back on with tension, and do that for about 10 to 15 sets. That's going to maximize the amount of stress on the collagen at the beginning, so that way you can force it longer with it already in its weakest state. Then once you're done with that session, you're going to take something like the Apex stuff, the Massive Novelties Stealth, and keep your dick slightly elongated for about 2 to 4 hours to maximize shape change. Do this practically every day, and that's going to cover you for length, for more than likely. Like, this is crossing off almost everything except for erection quality. Then for girth is basically the same idea. You need chronic dilation and some tissue breakdown. So what we're going to do is pump often. So let's say we do 20 minutes of like actual pumping. That's going to be your main routine. And then AM and PM, so when you wake up and before bed, you pump up for 10 minutes at a lighter pressure. After every pumping session, you probably want to wear a cock ring for 10 minutes to help keep that tissue dilating. It's just something I noticed. If I wear a cock ring after my pumping sessions, that engorgement sticks around a lot longer. So the goal is to stay as engorged as possible 24/7. Granted, it's going to be like this and coming in waves, but those waves should chronically be getting bigger. So that would be the most simple way to put it. Again, I have routines practically everywhere: Reddit, my ebooks, YouTube. So just dig around. They all follow the same principles if they were made after 2021. And Hitman, yes, I've been alive. It's just been crazy busy. Red can tell you about this. And yeah. Let's see. What? Is Hank in? No, okay. Okay, let's see. Better to extend with your legs spread or together. So I've had some hip issues. Basically, my left hip, flexor does not fire at all. So I've been paying a lot more attention about my hip posture. And basically, if your hips are together, it kind of causes more internal rotation of the pelvis just a bit. And what that could mean is that you're kind of tucking your penis under you, which may or may not be good for your pelvic floor while you extend. So I personally have my legs like shoulder width apart because that's just how I naturally sit. I don't think it's really going to make a big difference in gains, but for injury prevention, you probably just want to make sure your legs and hips are relaxed as possible with relatively good posture. Hitman, for soft clamping, is it best to only put the rings on the base for overall girth, or can I also place them under the glands as well so I can see expansion on the top as well? So I would not recommend really putting anything under the glands because there's a lot of nerve endings right there. And you don't want to piss off your nerves because that's going to lead to lack of sensation. The rings at the base overall, I can also place them under glands. And then what I've noticed is when I put a ring under my glands, it causes the glands to expand more rather than the top of my shaft. So you're not really squeezing it like this. You're kind of like squeezing like this, and then you get a lollipop effect almost. So don't do that if you're really trying to work the top of your shaft more with clamping. Massage the top more before you do your clamping, just because that's going to make the tissues looser than the bottom. Therefore, the pressure balance is going to be more towards the top. Additionally, and I just thought of this, so give me 1 second. Your penis, like corpus cavernosum, is shaped like this, right? And what that means is like all the connective tissues meet up here and get thicker and thicker near the glands, because like that tissue has to terminate somewhere. So what you should really be doing is massaging where it is the thickest to help loosen it up, so that way you have a fighting chance. So again, before you clamp and you're trying to work the top of the shaft more, really focus on under the glands with the massage. Also, Jamar, what is your current PE routine that you're doing, that you're focusing on at the moment? I am not doing PE. Well, I haven't done PE in like 3 weeks vacation, crash libido, and a bit of depression, if I'm being completely honest, made it very difficult to do PE, and I'm just going to get back into it now, mainly because Curveball at 612 Printed Polymers sent me some stuff to try out. So first, this is his pump sleeve. I have not put it on yet, so this might be a sloppy demonstration. But basically, it is a massive pump sleeve that will fit, you know, fit to order your cylinder size. And this is basically the biggest pump sleeve I have ever seen, outside of some fetish ones that are way more expensive than this, mind you. And this will basically keep you from pushing it all into your fat pad, making it very comfortable. So I can't wait to try this out, to be completely honest, because I've been having a lot of digging into my pelvis lately. And then this is the middle reliever, and this just goes on a vacuum bell. And this keeps your frenulum from over expanding. It works for like the regular Chinese cups that I sell, and also works for, what is it, Total Man cups. So check him out at Printed Polymers. I do believe he is limited stock because of how popular these have been. So, but yeah, I haven't really done anything for PE lately. I will get back into it. I'm starting slowly. Also, says Hitman, if you're using a pump sleeve, is there a need for soft clamping after that? I mean, it really depends on how tight it is, and like if you have too tight of a pump sleeve, it's going to be defeating the purpose of pumping, because it's going to make it harder to over expand, because it has to get past that rubber, and you're more likely to cause discoloration that way. So if you're using a very tight pump sleeve, no, you don't need to clamp, but you're also making pumping very inefficient. Can you increase turtle flaccid? So do you mean like how small your turtle to penis gets? So turtling is a bit of a sympathetic response. So like the only time I turtle is when I am extremely anxious, or if I'm doing something extremely vigorous, thinking like maxing out on a deadlift. That's the only time I turtle. If you are like chronically turtling, like truly turtling, not just being a grower, it's most likely a stress response or a taut response, and that's like your natural state. So really all you got to do to stop naturally turtling is, first, make sure that it's not an anxiety response, and two, work on being full all the time. And again, if you're like working on girth like I've been teaching lately, that should cover it. You should not get into a turtled state. Granted, if you're a grower, you're going to be projected to be more of a grower for most of your PE career. But if it's like you are an acorn, and I know that's a bit of a charged way to put it, it's probably relatively easy to treat in a 6 months to a year period. And Anthony, glad to see me. Yeah, I don't want to make any promises I'm going to be able to do this daily, but I'll try. Mr. Nico Trilos, BD, flaccid keeps increasing means I'm on the right track. I'm only doing PE for 3 months now. So if your flaccid is increasing, that means at the very least your flexibility response has increased, right? So if this is like, I'm assuming you meant stretch flaccid. If you meant regular flaccid, then that means there's just more blood flow in general to your penis, which is a good sign, right? That means it's doing nutrient delivery. So you should be seeing like very small improvements erect by now, but you know, it's not unheard of not to. So I would keep with it. By month 4, if you didn't really see any improvement erects, I would actually increase your workload a bit. Okay, how's it going, BD? It's going well enough, I suppose. It's just been crazy busy on the business side, like in a good way. And then I got a puppy, and that's been taking up a lot of my free time, so. Okay, so Asim, are you going to make a new pelvic floor hard flaccid video? Eventually. I don't have time to write at the moment, so I can't make any promises on that. Like, I'm telling you guys, it has been absolutely nuts on the business end, and if I talked about it too much, it would sound like I'm bragging. So I'm not going to, and all I'm going to say is thank you, but that's part of the reason why I've been kind of far out from YouTube, is just, it's nuts. It's nuts in a good way. Yes, so back to the finasteride I started with. Thinking about dutasteride mesotherapy, my doctor said no side effect. Let's see. I don't know much about dutasteride. Let me do a quick Google. Dutasteride is a medication primarily used to treat the symptoms of enlarged prostate. It works by blocking the enzyme 5-alpha reductase. Okay, so you got to be careful. It is just a 5-alpha reductase inhibitor, similar to finasteride. I don't know how suppressive it is, because like it could be half as effective as finasteride at blocking DHT production. Therefore, you won't have as much issues as someone else on finasteride, but it's going to be dose dependent. So like if you're taking 2 milligrams of dutasteride compared to someone with 1 milligram dutasteride, or finasteride rather, and I don't know the bioavailability and all that jazz. But point being is, be very careful when you're playing with your male sex hormones, because like it does a lot for you. And just because you want to keep your hair, there are other options potentially that won't fuck with your hormones as much. But if it's like for benign prostatic hyperplasia, I would recommend it, just because you don't want to get potential prostate cancer, right? And hello, sunshine. MR86 combined with the apex of high tension stretcher. How would the stealth increase results? So the way I see it is the apex would be your main workload, right? So like you'll be using that for 30 to 40 minutes a day, getting to your, fatigue and strain metrics. And then if you're still not seeing the gains you really want to, you can ensure that you're at least keeping the elongation, therefore getting the shape change you need with the stealth. So like it would be different than what someone who's only using the stealth would be using it for. So like in the video, I had it wrapped pretty tight around itself to keep my penis pretty tight, because I was basically just doing it as a light routine today. But what you would want to do is actually have your penis, as Perv has been saying, to keep 90% elongated. I think you could safely keep at 100% elongation, but when you get above, like, let's say 102, 103, that's when that strain becomes a bit more damaging. So, like, again, we're talking about millimeters here, so it's going to be hard to tell at that high of a point. But really, you want to have your penis be as long as it can be without stretching it, and that's where this would come in if you're using with, like, the apex extender. Okay, hot sunshine. How long will it take to gain 2 inches? How can you achieve it? So, I gained 3 inches. My first 1.5 took me 4 months. 4 months, I wish. 14 months. My first 1.5 took 14 months. And then I just took a break from PE. It took me like over a year to get another 1/2 inch. But I was trying a lot of things, and I was probably overworking it. My 3rd inch was a lot of up and downs too, but like going from 8 inches to 9 inches, documented the last time, took me about a year. And at least I think it did, guys. It's been like a decade of doing PE. My numbers are going to be fuzzy without them right in front of me, but it takes a while. It's going to probably take you 3 to 4 years to gain 2 inches with luck. Most guys, I'm going to actually say, is probably going to take 5 years to gain that much, considering life gets in the way, because that's usually what stops me from doing PE. How to get there, it's really up to you. If you're just getting started, check out my beginner's routines here on YouTube. Basically, it's a 2-hour free course that tells you all you need to know about all the different options for PE, and then gives you the routines associated with said devices. And hello, Cage from what I remember, but Poseidon now. What would be the reason why an ADS for 2 to 4 hours might be an alternative than 3 feeder sets a day for retention? So 3 feeder sets of pumping is going to be definitely better for girth. When we were trying to do the gain-a-thon, and that's been on hiatus for anyone that was wondering. Basically, like, anyone that was doing 3 pumping sessions a day ended up gaining more girth than length, if they gained any length at all. So if you're really trying to gain length, you probably want to limit how much chronic expansion you have, because like I'm going to tell you guys this now, I think girth is actually easier to gain than length if you set it up right. But 2 to 4 hours of all-day stretcher fits better into a lot of people's schedules, because they don't have to think about, okay, how am I going to fit in another 10 minutes of pumping every day? Instead, they'll be like, all right, I can put this device on, forget about it for 2 hours, do something else, and then come back, and then I already got, you know, my retention in for the rest of the day. Okay. I hate how that jumps in. Thank you for the super chat. I will get to that in 1 second. And what's up, Waking Dream? Where was this guy? Okay. Curious Porridge. My glands aren't long enough to fill my large cup to ensure expansion. My glands end up filling 2/3 of it. There's free space in the rear. Any thoughts? Do I have a vacuum cup up here? Yeah. So all you would have to do is, when I was between sizes like a medium and a large, I would pack this with tissue, so like toilet paper or tissue, and that way it was just more comfortable for whatever reason. The only problem is like if you use tissue, there's a good chance you'll block the valve itself, but like it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Additionally, you should be able to get pretty deep into the bell and then make the vacuum seal as well. But like at that point, you got to be careful, because like there's a lot more room, for, like literal wiggle room, and that's a chance for higher risk of blisters. So, all right, let me get to that super chat. Zeev, can the oh my goodness, can the stealth stretch make blisters like the vacuum hanger? So yes, it can. I did get a blister from wearing it, but again, it's going to be time dependent more than anything. So for example, I was wearing it out and about doing some grocery shoppings 3 or 4 months ago. It was fine at minute 90. And then I check it again 2 hours, like not 2 hours, 30 minutes later, and I had a blister. And that mainly came down to me using too small of a bell for my glands, and then that abrasion eventually caused the blister to form. So I have yet to get a blister with an XL bell. So that's the difference between the 42mm bell and the 45mm bell at peak muscle physique. So to me, blisters are more of a sizing issue rather than a pressure issue, because basically, or a tension issue rather, because basically what happens is, like, as you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the cup, there's less and less and less space for pressure to be dissipated. So if you're already too big for the bell, all that pressure is going to build up right in the same spot every time. And if it goes too long, that's how a blister happens. Like when I was between the 42 and the 45, the 42 would give me blisters relatively often. Same exact spot, right beside my urethral opening. Now, since I'm at the 45, no blisters, because like it's the entire like inch of the top of my glands rather than a quarter or a half an inch that's taking that pressure. So back to your question, this stuff can cause blisters, but like if you're using the right size vacuum bell, you are more than likely fine. I would also take your time adjusting to it. So like don't wear it for an hour straight on the first wear if you never wore anything like this. 20 minutes check, 20 minutes check, 20 minutes check. Okay, so we stopped with porridge, and I will get to you guys. Okay. Helvetica, never caught a BD live before. They have been quite rare lately, so congratulations. Juan, traditional 20-minute sets at 6 inches mercury still works. I would say yes, but there's going to be a very significant drop off in success after, let's say, 2 to 3 months. 20 minutes tends to be a lot more of an edema type of pumping. You're better off of chopping that down to 10 minutes, so 2 10-minute sets, or better yet, 4 5-minute sets if you really want to do traditional pumping. Then 6 inches of mercury, this is going to be comfort dependent. Actually, I was talking with Waking Dream about this. He has significant difficulties pumping at very high pressures. I think anything beyond like 6 inches of mercury causes severe discomfort. And for me, anything over like 8 to 9 inches of mercury causes severe discomfort. But like after 2 or 3 months of it, I get used to it, right? So you really want to be in that slight discomfort range where it's noticeable, the discomfort, but it's not like making you focus on it. So like it's like a 2 out of 10. So we need to talk more about pressures and stuff. And I actually just need to sit down and think about PE again. I've not had time to really think about PE in the past couple months, but yeah, 20 minutes total is good. You probably just want to play with your sets. 6 inches of mercury is a good place to start. It might actually be a little high to start. Okay. Blackberry, assuming that measuring is done meticulously, what could be the reason 4 to 6% strain is achieved but not 2 to 4% fatigue, and how do we fix this? Strain can be mitigated by a stretch flex response. So like you pull on your PP, here actually I have a proxy, you pull on your PP, but inside your pelvis are little muscles. When they feel tension, they flex, and therefore it actually retracts your penis a bit. So if your PP is nice and tired, so is your pelvic floor more than likely, and it's actually going to cause a bit more sensitivity to that flex response, especially after a little bit of trauma. So you can try this, but lightly, okay? Because like if you pull your PP and Kegel at the same time, you will feel your penis tug back. And I would just say, feel it just so you can see it happens, just so you know it's a real response. And then that's probably some of it. Additionally, that fatigue, so that 2 to 3% for me goes away after like 5 to 10 minutes. I will not be at my max length after 10 minutes. It'll retract a bit, but we should see that floppiness, and we should see an extended flaccid for that, 4 to 6 hour period afterwards. And I think I got another super chat, so let me check. Yes, I did. When you going to send the Stealth Stretcher international? So I have third-party logistic companies being set up as we speak. However, the Stealth is a new product, and it's going to take about 2 months for me to get it to them. If you want it now, massivenovelties.com for international. Okay. And thank you for the super chats. Okay. Nacho. Do you view better for length or static or interval? What do I think is better, static or interval, specifically for doing something in the background, like example gaming? Would static be more convenient than interval extending? So the more important thing, like if you want to do like a hybrid technique, 10 1-minute sets at the beginning, then go do whatever the hell you want, and then you can do static. The important thing is that you front load the fatigue and then stretch out. And like ideally in that scenario, hanging would be better because gravity would be constantly elongating you, so you don't have to be constantly fiddling with the springs every 10 to 15 minutes. Porridge would like you guys to give the live a like. I would appreciate it as well. You don't have to. So Texas, let's see, I'm good, DR, just working away. This heat is killing me in Texas. Well, he is moving up here eventually, and that's all I can really say about that. It's quite humid here too, Red, believe it or not. But I think your new place has air conditioning, so good. Anyway, ATG, how many months for girth and how many months for length in a year? I'm going to start extending soon. So, it depends. Like, I've been training basically nothing but length for 2 years. I just take a month or two off and then get back to length. For girth, ideally you do it for a year, but like if you hit your girth gains, why the hell would you keep doing it? Like you hit your goal. You probably want to switch it every year, like if we're talking like under a ideal scenario, but like it doesn't really matter. It's more about like what you want to do at that point. Okay. Bigger Bitcoin. Could you give an example of how low intensity length work? Okay, so there's like 3 different types of tension, and I haven't talked about middle tension that much. But low tension is going to be under 2 pounds. This is something you're going to wear for 2 to 4 hours. And this is going to cause more shape-changing enzyme release, metallomatrix proteinase. This is what causes the collagen to get weaker and then allows more collagen to be placed in between it. It does not cause growth on its own, but it can cause the structure of the penis to become more uniform. Therefore, any like bumps and grooves in the structure are straightened out, and it's actually a pretty easy way to make gains because you're working with existing tissue. Then there's high tension, and I skipped middle tension for a reason. High tension is what actually pulls the tissue apart and causes like micro tears or fatigue to the tissue. This fatigue is what releases growth factors, and those growth factors are what signals the stem cells in your penis to produce more collagen proteins. Then there's mid-range tension, which would be, let's say, 3 pounds to 5 pounds. And it does a bit of both, but there's also this property called stress relaxation. And stress relaxation is basically the tissue starts becoming more taffy-like. And if you do it for long enough, it would appear that it's similar to like the matrix enzyme proteinase release, but from more of a physics-based perspective. I haven't really given it much attention, but there could be something to it. You probably won't need to add into your routine. It's more going to be like a secondary thing. Like if you're not gaining, okay, try this. But like the main thing I know that actually causes growth is high tension. The main thing that causes shape change optimally is going to be low tension. Okay. So not going to lie, vibration is really helping me. My soft flaccid size is bigger and softer. My flaccid used to be harder, but now it's spongy. That's interesting. And someone's asking for links, I'm assuming, to peak male physique. But I'm trying to think. Since I've stopped doing PE, my flaccid, and again, my libido was terrible, so this is an N of 1 with a big caveat, was not the greatest. Therefore, my flaccid was pretty stiff almost. Like, it felt dense and hollow. Now that my libido is returning and I pumped once, 3 days ago, mind you, my flaccid is a lot bigger. I do need to try vibrations soon, and if it works, you know, like it should work, obviously. But if it works like how you're saying, I should have a much bigger flaccid very soon. Where the... There we go. Shop now. So I'm going to drop the Peak Male Physique link for the Stealth because I've just been talking about it a lot. Just so you know, there's a not safe for work picture in there. Okay. Mylene, how are you doing? I haven't seen you in a while. So I'm in a good place, I think, mentally at least. So for those uninitiated, my one dog died of cancer a couple months ago, and I think I'm in a good place mentally from that, but that's part of the reason why I also haven't been really online. It's just depression, really. So I'm good for the most part. I really need to get back to the gym, but I'm good. Okay. How do you feel about the Hink trial with participants? I think he did a damn good job, although I'd love to see a study with guys that aren't noobs and have exhausted noob games. I think Hink is probably one of the best people to ever talk about PE, and I do not say things like that lightly. He is my business partner, and I am extremely impressed with what he did. With, like, I know how much he has going on in the background, and it's just amazing to me. But because of the Hink trial, we're actually looking at bringing on like a part-time researcher to do more stuff like this. So granted, it's going to be a while before you guys see another trial because we need to hire someone, then we need to do the trial. So like that's at least 8 months. But we're looking at things like, the first thought I had was like, all right, we're going to give everyone we're going to make, 4 or 5 groups. One that will just get the apex, one will just get the male hanger, one will get a vacuum hanger, one will get the stealth. We'll give them routines. We're going to track adherence first and foremost. But since we're going to be able to track how much tension they're using, we can see if there's any difference between using the extender versus using weights versus using a compression hanger versus using a vacuum hanger versus using an all-day stretcher. And that's probably going to be the most useful fucking data ever for length gains, just because we'll actually see if the, let's say for example, the apex extender, since it pushes into your hip and out into open space, 2 forces for direct gains potentially, because that way and that way, compared to a hanger which only goes that way. Does that actually lead to 50% more attention applied? And if it's easier to adhere to, you should probably gain more. But if it doesn't, then what does that actually say about routine frequency, right? So there's a whole shit to load we need to look at still. And it's exciting, and I haven't really thought about this in 3 months, so forgive me for talking fast. But we're just at the tip of the iceberg of what Doc and I can do, particularly Doc, but... Okay, Brandon, I've been doing manual PE stretching on and off for a year now. Bought a vacuum cup and have been hanging 10 pounds for 30 minutes every day, using ADS right after for a few hours. It should be good. Off and on for a year now is a bit concerning though, because this isn't a muscle, okay? Muscles, they need breaks. The thing with soft tissues is that they're chronically under load in some regard. And it needs basically a chronic stimulus almost to see these gains. So I said every other day for PE about 2 or 3 years ago. I made gains with it, but it pittered out pretty fast if I'm being honest. So I've changed my thing to be okay, high intensity one day, low intensity one day, high intensity, boom, 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 boom. That seems to be the best way to go about it, but I feel like that kind of changes in routine makes it a bit hard to pull off. So ideally what you're doing now is fine, but it needs to be Monday through Friday at the least. Okay. How much do you think a beginner can gain through manuals? Ask Mohanta. Okay. Through manuals, and when should he switch to pump or extenders? So ideally you do manuals for about 3 to 4 months to get a feel for it. But there's going to be a point where pulling on your dick for 30 minutes a night is going to get very boring and very taxing. So once it becomes too unrealistic for you to actually stick to manuals is when you want to get to the device. And then there's going to be some people I know I'm not going to be able to tug on my dick for 15 minutes a night. I'm going to get to the device, and that's fine. But you got to start slow, because you're not going to have muscle fatigue to keep you from overdoing it. Hitman says he gets all of his PE stuff from you pump cylinders and sleep, and he's probably the fastest gainer I have heard of. So check out peakphysique.com. I am mostly kidding. You don't have to buy stuff from me, but it would be a huge help to our efforts here. All right, hold on. Waking dream. Just embrace the balding woman. Look at you totally different way. It's much better than fucking with chemicals and DHT. I would largely agree with that, except I started having some temporal recession because I was fucking with chemicals. So I might as well use the chemicals to fix it and then get off the chemicals altogether. That's why I'm doing it. But I also understand men's desire to keep their hair and keep their youthfulness, because I get compliments about my hair all the time. I still do. I would like to keep it that way. So if you have the humility to go bald, I guess, do so. More power to you. But for some of us who are too vain, I understand, is all I'm going to say. Okay, now I feel like... Okay, got that. Demon. If I pump above 10 inches of mercury 2 times a day, 3 sets, 5 minutes, can I get any gains this way if I do it every day? It should cause at least some kind of change. He's that's what, 30 minutes total. My normal pumping routines are about 20 minutes. Then I I'm trying to think. Most of my girth work was been capped around 45 minutes. So you're doing 30 minutes, and if you're like a intermediate to beginner, well, that's totally fine. Splitting it up is actually probably better long term. So only thing I'd worry about is like getting up to 10 inches of mercury that soon might not necessarily be the best thing, because you might be causing more of like a edema response rather than like a tissue inflammation response. And like, I know it's like picking, how do you put it? Basically, it's semantics at that point, but like that little detail could matter. Okay, super chat. Vacuum hanging for 3 months, not seeing any gains. Currently doing 3 kilograms, which is like under 10 pounds. 3 sets, 10 minutes, and then do 1 set at 3.5 kilograms, which is like 11 pounds. For 1 set, I do not get gains currently. 18 to 19 centimeters, 23. He wants to hit 23 centimeters, not seeing strain. Okay. Hold on, let me just double check my math. 3.5 kg. 2 pounds. Okay, so that's about 8 pounds versus 7 pounds. Okay. 3 months, not seeing gains. So first thing, if you just started, the 12-week period is where you'd probably start seeing gains. You're doing 20 minutes total. That's a bit low, if I'm reading this right. No, you're doing 40 minutes total. So let me flip that. That's actually a little bit high for a beginner. You would have to check your erection quality. If your erection quality is good, then you're probably not overworking. Then if you're not pumping, that's actually a very big part of it. So like, think about it this way. You have the tunica albuginea that runs along the outside, but the inside is the blood vessels. Length work doesn't really train blood vessels. Pumping does. So if you want to get the entire new tissue filled out, you need to get some erection quality built up and some tissue density built up on the inside. So if I were you, and if you haven't been pumping, start pumping, let's say 1 10-minute set this week, or whenever you get it, and then add that to 2 10-minute sets AM and PM, just to get the blood vessels more full. And then you should slowly see your erection quality get harder and harder, and that should translate to more length gains. Okay, hold on, guys. There we go. Okay, Adam, vibration extending for 5 days straight, a week, 2 off, too much work? Probably not, because I would do about 6 days. The real kicker is how long you are doing it. So like, if you're doing more than 20 minutes of vibration, probably don't need it. I guess I was doing 30, but you get my point. Then how much weight are you using? Because like, if you're doing 15 pounds, that is literally 50% more than 10 pounds in overall work. So if you're having great erections and you're still sensitive, keep it up. Seraphim, can hip or lower back issues affect PE? My balls tend to draw up most of the time, and I have a lot of turtling even though my PE is not aggressive. Okay, so I've been going to a chiropractor lately. I guess that's not necessarily what he is. He's more of a physiotherapist. But basically, what your pelvis is a keystone, right? So you have your hips here and here. So like, if you have any changes into how your pelvis is seated, say you have one leg longer than the other, it's going to tilt up a bit. And then the little muscles at the bottom, I don't know how well you guys can see it, the little muscles at the bottom are going to shift as well. So like, if you have like insanely weird posture, and that also means this or this too, right? That could potentially be putting a lot of pressure on your pelvic floor, and therefore not allowing blood into your penis while flaccid, and therefore potentially also hurting your erection quality. So if you do have a fucked up lower back, it is totally possible that that compression is somehow impacting your pelvic floor, but it's more likely going to be some kind of hip issue rather than lower back issue. Now this is like some severe anterior pelvic tilt. Okay, Brandon. Started at 7 1/4 bone press stretch flaccid. Sorry, gas because I stood up. Excuse me, guys. Okay, started at bone press stretch flaccid at 7 1/4 for 3 months. Pretty consistent now at 7.87, which is 7 7/8, I believe. But BPL is not as increasing as much as the flaccid stretch. That should be expected because you're teaching an elasticity response and a flexibility response too. So like for me, the first 2 weeks of me getting back to an actual length routine, my stretch flaccid will go up about 1/4 of an inch to 1/3 of an inch. When I stop 3 days later, that delta comes down, but most of the time my erect gains in that time frame stick around. So tracking stretch flaccid is useful day to day, but it is not useful at all tracking long-term gains. Just because it's a flexibility thing, and like you can become more flexible within a week, right? So I wouldn't put too much weight into it, but like ideally you see a big jump in the bone press stretch flaccid in the first 2 or 3 weeks, and then it pitters out. But that rate of change between stretch flaccid after the 2 to 3 weeks should be relatively close to your bone press erect length change following that. Hitman, not surprising that business is going off considering PE is becoming a lot more mainstream and a lot of people want to know more about it. And people see hope now giving results, but he's out. Good luck. Thanks for answering the question. So I'm trying to think. I don't think PE is really coming that mainstream. I think PE has gotten a lot easier to digest because of people like me and Doc and Perv and even M9 and the people at Science of PE, right? So like it has been exceptionally easy to get started. And the way I look at it is like whoever has the easiest checkouts is going to be the one that gets the lion's shares of the sales. So like that's been like my entire strategy lately. And I'm not going to give away too much, but we have very good conversion rates compared to most of the people in our industry. So Forsaken, I tried talking to Doc about this question. He tends to get really triggered when body fat percentage is concerned. Don't remind me. If a guy gets really lean, still has a big fat pad, what's the next step? So what's the next step? So like define lean first of all. Are you at 8% body fat but still having 1 inch fat pad? There's not much you can do other than liposuction. If you're at 15% body fat and still have a 1 inch fat pad, you could definitely lose 5 to 10 pounds. And it'd be weird if your fat pad did not get at least a little bit smaller in that time frame, right? For me, going from let's say 18% body fat to like 14% body fat, I see a significant drop off in my fat pad, but it's still about a 1/2 inch once I get leaner than that. Granted, I haven't been leaner than about 14% probably in a decade at this point. So it's really like, to me, fat pad doesn't really matter all that much. It like you're so dialed in on the aesthetics at that point that you're missing out a lot of other things about penis size and, you know, good sex and everything else. Like the physical aspects of sex rather than the visual. So Anthony, just got the auto pump from P&P and I absolutely love it. The Bathmate is now in the rearview mirror. I still have my Bathmate, and what I noticed, like, that gasket's probably like 8 years old at this point. It definitely goes bad, like the rubber, and doesn't get nearly as much pressure. So I don't know, that's something for you guys that still use Bathmates to keep in mind, is that the rubber does degrade over time. Connor, what's the best exercises with steel cord? So for those who don't know, this is what we think steel cord is. So you have your corpus cavernosum on the outside, and then you have, you have the tunica albuginea on the outside, followed by the corpus cavernosum. There are two chambers of the corpus cavernosum. Inside of that will be the septum of the penis, which is basically a dense collagen weave from the tunica albuginea. Some people, whether it be just bad luck, overstress, or overtraining, that tissue becomes like very stiff, whether it be like from a strength adaptation or a stress response. Most of the time it's going to be a stress response. So what you got to do in that case is get it to relax first, and then you can stretch it out. So heat and massage, like let's say 10 minutes of heat followed by 5 to 10 minutes of massage up and down the center of the shaft, preferably semi-erect, will help loosen up the steel cord. And then you go do your normal PE. Love from Australia. We need to find a 3PL for Australia. Waking Dream. 3PL, third party logistics, if you guys want to learn business lingo. Okay, Ian says he's gained 1.5 inches in 15 months. And like, I don't want to say that's the best case, but that's a good case scenario. Like, that's similar to what I've done. So I know it's possible. I would say the top 20% of gainers will be able to pull that off, if you guys are like looking for context. Going off of that, would you say that you're an above average responder? I don't know if I'm an above average responder, but I respond to a lot, if that makes sense. So like, I respond with clamping, I respond with hanging, I respond with extending. I responded with manuals, I responded to pumping. But like, nothing has made me gain insanely fast. Like, we're talking, you know, 1/8 of an inch to a 1/16 of an inch, right? It's just a matter of fact that I've done it for 10 years. I put on a lot of size. The problem is that a lot of people jump ship too early from what they were doing before they can actually tell it's doing gains. And like, I'm always confused on the other side of this same coin. Is like, I've been doing this routine every day for a year and they don't gain. Like, are you insane, right? Because like, to me, doing something that's not working for more than 6 months, I would have definitely stopped by then, right? But yeah, I would say I'm above average responder, but not like a freaky responder. Okay, Mad Hatter. Just want to say thanks for your videos. You are welcome. Been doing PE since April 20th and gone from 18 centimeters to about 18.6 to 18.7. How long should I stick with this routine before increasing time or pressure? Well, I would have to know the routine you're doing. Like, basically what I tell people is like, for example, with hanging or extending, let's get you up to the 20 to 30 minute mark, and then we'll start playing with the weight. Same idea goes for pumping to a certain degree. Like, once you do like 20 to 30 minutes of pumping, you can start playing with pressure, but like, that pressure increase is going to be so slow. Like, we're talking maybe 1 inch of mercury every 6 weeks. That it's not something you really need to plan out all that much. Basically, when you stop feeling that discomfort, that's when I would add more pressure. Sorry. Read the next question. It made me think about something else. So we're just going to say, Kokro, what's the biggest newbie gainer you have ever seen? Who is the biggest newbie gainer potential? Growers, showers, etc. So the biggest newbie gainer that I have seen is probably Perv or Adam over at Massive Novelties. He put on a lot of size very quickly. He is a very flexible individual, like a scary flexible individual. So I think that has something to do with it. He is also a soft tissue expert before he switched over to doing PE for a living, you know, the apex extenders. So between his understanding of how soft tissues worked already and his above average genetics, particularly with collagen, flexibility and everything like that, he had a very fast response rate. Adam's problem now is just consistency, so he hasn't really put on that much more size since he reached, you know, I think 8 3/4 at this point. But yeah, I think he put on like 1.5 inches in allegedly 10 months. I've seen pictures of it. I don't remember the numbers. This is really why I said allegedly. So he would probably be the biggest newbie gain. People with the most potential in general, though, are going to be growers with poor erection quality, because most of the time growers that have poor erection quality are unhealthy, and once they start getting their tissues healthy again, they'll get fast improvements, right? It's just that simple. So they'll put on, they'll become more of a shower, and they'll also gain back, like 10% of their erection quality. And for me, going from like a 90% erection to a 100% erection is literally a quarter of an inch. So, let's say they had 50% erection quality and went to 80, that's an even bigger jump, right? So, yeah. Let me get some water, guys. I'll be back in a minute. Okay. Ian, do you really think length before girth is a fallacy? I gain more length when my girth is stalled. Yes, and it is like a basic math equation. Not equation, but math puzzle. So let's say your dick is 20% thicker than when you started. So you were 5 inches of girth. That's 20% of that. That would be 6 inches of girth. It's reasonable to assume that your dick is now 20% stronger. But if you haven't trained length at all, you should only be starting at a weight of like 5 pounds. So 20% of 5 pounds is going to be 6 pounds. So you need to start with 1 more pound if your dick is an inch thicker than it was originally, right? So to me, like, yeah, it's harder, but like in actual application, it doesn't matter at all. Okay, silly cat videos. What do you think of Angion Method subreddit? I don't know how it's still around. So for those uninitiated, and that means you have not been on Reddit for all that long, Angion is an alternative to PE founded by Janus Bifrons, and I will try to be as unbiased as possible. His main idea is that the more shear stress you do to a blood vessel, the more angiogenesis, therefore angion, you can achieve without risking the structures of the penis. And therefore you can have superhuman erection quality by doing some very special massages to your penis. The problem with Angion is that at the very beginning, the founder said that you can make actual tissue improvements like tissue hypertrophy, which just doesn't happen. Like from a scientific standpoint, you need some kind of trauma to elicit some collagen production, therefore get a longer tunica albuginea. So yes, you can improve your erection quality using Angion, but you'll probably improve your erection quality better with a pump and doing some cardio. And you'll actually gain some size with a pump too. Okay, DRX, I'm a hard gainer. Wait, hold on, DRRX, there we go. I'm a hard gainer, what can I do besides pumping? There's a lot you can still do. First, massage. The massage gets your tissues relaxed, therefore they'll be easier to expand, therefore you can do a lot more work with the same pressure, or do the same amount of work with less pressure. So like from a physiological perspective, the collagen is fused together into a weave. What massage does is actually break down the little bonds between the collagen fibrils running beside each other, making them easier to pull apart. And then on top of that, that stress to the collagen weave itself causes them to elongate already. So because it's, part of protecting the tissue. So if we massage, we should be able to pump up more with less pressure in less time potentially. Then you can also try to do clamping, which is going to be internal based pressure mechanism. So let's say you have an overactive lymph response or edema response. Clamping would do the opposite, and it feels like my nipples are hanging out. But with the clamping, that internal pressure is going to make it next to impossible to have an edema response, one. And two, it's going to cause more hypoxia rather than tissue breakdown. And like, let's say you have low blood vessel density in your dick compared to a normal guy or a guy your size. That quick increase of blood vessel density from hypoxia angiogenesis will lead to faster filling in of the tunica albuginea, therefore faster erect gain. So like, there's still a lot of things you can try. The problem is it's like going to take you 9 months to try it all. And hello, Destroyer. Let's see. Willie Wood, been vacuum hanging for 3 months now, not seeing any gain. Started with 1 kilogram for 3 sets. Now doing 3 kilograms for 4 sets, 10 minutes. What should I do? So how long were you doing 1 kilogram for 3 sets? Because like if you're doing that for 2 months, that might be some of the issue. Now you're up to 3 for 4 sets. So I'd assume like in the month 3, you jumped the 3 kilograms, right? So you did 1 kilogram, 2 kilogram, 3 kilogram. That's at 40 minutes. So first and foremost, I always prescribe a little bit of girth. Like I already touched on this earlier in the stream, but that's going to help fill out the corpus cavernosum, therefore pushing more pressure into the tunica albuginea, therefore bigger erections. And then that's like the first place I would start. Adding massage will help loosen up the tissues as well. And then you could always try a low tension after the fact to help keep that new shape as well. But like if you have improvements in erection quality, your flaccid is slowly getting bigger, then you're on the right track. You're just probably on the slower end of gains. But you know, if you keep up it for a year, you can still probably gain a half an inch. Billy Batson. Any ways to get more mid-shaft expansion with soft clamping? Do you recommend 10-minute sets for soft clamping? Sometimes I use 4 cock rings, but I don't hit expansion even though I have prominent dorsal veins in veins. So expansion in general is going to be a bit difficult to hit with clamping. If you're trying to, what was it? Target the mid-shaft more, you could take like a sleeve and then put the cock rings on the top of the sleeve, so that way the pressure is more up towards the top of the penis without really using more cock rings, but that will increase the overall pressure load. Secondly, 10 minutes, it depends on how long you've been doing this. So like if it's 10-minute sets and you're doing 4 sets of 10, that's more than enough for clamping. It's probably borderline too much. But if we're trying to actually mimic pumping, we probably want to do 5-minute sets, and that way you get more chances of tissue fatigue, because tissue fatigues and breaks down at the point of load. So like just because you're holding it for 10 minutes, that doesn't mean the tissue is actually degrading for that 10 minutes. It's actually only degrading when it reaches maximum size. The more often it reaches maximum size, so it needs to pulse a bit, and that's why we do sets and hanging and interval pumping and interval extending. You need to mimic that a bit with clamping. All right, guys, I'm going to go for 12 more minutes because I'm already losing my voice. What the fuck is this? What are you talking about, Forsaken? Paladin Zevzor. Finally caught the live. Can you rate my routine? Okay. I hang 3 to 9 sets, starting at 5 pounds for 5 minutes, 6 pounds for 5 minutes, and then 6.5 pounds for 5 minutes, followed by 7 pounds for 5 minutes. So that's one way to do it. What I would actually recommend is climbing up and then climbing down. So like if you're doing, you basically want to have 6 sets, so you'd be doing 5, 6, 7, 7, 6, 5. And that way you build up the fatigue, but you also, what they used to call, ride the fatigue. But what the research shows is like once you reach like your 10th set or load cycle, your tissue is at its weakest point. So like you could do 7 pounds of tension for your first 3 sets. And then actually on the 5th or 6th set, it's 5 pounds of weight will actually cause the same amount of degradation as 7 pounds would, or like elongation. So I don't know how much that matters for gains, but it is interesting. What do I think of the Fenrir clamp? It's funny, they have been in the Getting Bigger mod chats recently just because they want fair treatment. I'm like, whatever. I'm not really doing much on r/Getting Bigger. I've given it off to Red and the mods there for the most part. I'm just there to make sure things don't get shitty. But anyway, it's probably fine, but I'm not a huge fan of clamping in general. And I'm really against assisted clamping. So that's when you put the Fenrir clamp on, then you put the penis pump on top of that, you clamp a bit, and then you pump again, or something like that. I might have the order flipped. I think that's a recipe for disaster long term, but just for clamping, it's probably fine. Excuse me. Okay, I'm the opposite. I can pump with high pressures without problems. What the fuck is this? You might just have a thicker than normal tunica, or you have weird nerves that don't sense the tension. Because, I think I've read about this, but like, your nerve cells are specialized in your penis, right? So they are going to feel compression and heat. Meanwhile, they won't really feel stretch. So for pumping and hanging, you're not really going to feel much tension itself. But like when you're overexpanding with pumping in general, that's kind of like the opposite of compression, right? So like you'll feel that pretty well. If you've been doing some pretty hard jerking, that could actually numb you out from pumping as well. So that's something you should keep in mind. I don't know what your masturbation habits are like, but that's one thing to keep in mind. Again, pressure sensitivity and pressure needed is going to be totally up to the individual. That's why we say 5 inches to 15 inches of mercury. I'm sorry for slurring. I tend to be around 8 to 10 inches of mercury. Doc has studies that show 11.87 inches of mercury or some number like that is ideal. There's no real ideal. The ideal comes down to what you can handle. Eric, Bathmate Extreme on max pressure doesn't feel like anything to me, 0 discomfort. Well, first question is like, how long have you been using the Bathmate? I was able to max the shit out of my Bathmate like back 5 or 6 years ago. But that was after 3 or 4 months of use. I think the maximum pressure, and this is coming from Doc, is like 13 inches of mercury. I would say you could probably get it higher if you really forced it, because like it just, you have to push it down really hard and just hopefully it sticks. But like with normal use, it should only get up to 13 inches of mercury. Wait, hold on, what? Doc's dog died recently too. Yeah, we have a lot of weird coincidences like that. There's a correlation between growing your PP and your dog's dying. So I have a dog that is 8 years old. I've been doing PE for 10. If there was any correlation, she would have already died. So we already know that's not how it happened. Doc's dog was like almost 20 years old from what I remember. So there's no correlation. I know it's just a shit post, but there's no correlation. Okay. After extending, how long do I pump for if my goal is length? You'd only really need 10 minutes. And if you're pumping directly after extending, your pumping sensation is going to be a lot more extreme, meaning like 7 inches of mercury, if you haven't pumped, is going to feel a lot more insane if you have done extending. Let me fix that. If you just extended and you're used to using 7 inches of mercury, normally with pumping, that same 7 inches of mercury is going to be a lot more intense after doing length work. because the tissues have already been degraded. Therefore, they're much easier to expand. So keep that in mind. If you're not hitting your pressure that you normally do, totally normal. Okay, Adam, 3x10 vibe extending and 4x5 pumping is a good all-around routine. It should be. The problem is like the way I see it is like the stem cells in your penis can only do so much, right? So like it can grow in this direction and it can grow in this direction. If you want to see the changes on the ruler really fast, in either direction, you need to focus on that direction because you only have so many workers on or in the penis. Therefore, it's a lot more rewarding and a lot easier to track actually if you have it all dedicated to, like, say, building up length versus girth. Anthony, will it be harder to gain at 50? Tell me like it is. No, but you might need to do a little more pressure. First, let's say, it depends on how well your penile health was to begin with. So like if you started Cialis early, I'm not saying start Cialis, guys, but like Cialis shows that it helps keep your erection it helps keeping your penis from atrophying from lack of erection quality and lack of use, for example. So like once you hit 40, your testosterone starts dropping, right? It's just what happens. People start seeing penile atrophy at the same time because their libido drops, therefore they're not getting the same type of erections, therefore use it or lose it, right? So the good news is like if you start doing PE, you can reverse a lot of that penile atrophy. Now, older tissues tend to be thicker, just in general. So like the 7 to 8 inches of mercury that I have to use, and that's just a random number, for you to have the same effect, it might have to be 9 to 10 inches of mercury, depending on like how thick your tunica is. And again, it's just an assumption, since you're an older individual, you'll have a thicker tunica and therefore you need a little bit more pressure. But in general, it works just the same. You might have to have more days for recovery, but it will work. Will it be harder? Depends on what you mean by harder. And because it's going to also be a different type of gain for you if we're talking about reversing penile atrophy. What's the best apex routine for length? I believe we put something on the site. Extenders. There is a routine on the site. Yeah, very last picture. That is a very good starting point. I know you've been on the channel a lot, so I believe you know what to do already, Gaddafi. But like if you go to Peak Male Physique / Apex High Tension Extender, you know, just go to it. Last thing, that's going to be your best bet. I swear to God. Curtis Ross, when will your pump creams be available? I bought the last post pump cream, but I want the other two. So I'm assuming you mean Max D. Well, when Red gets his ass up to Pittsburgh, we'll figure out how to make it again. I wanted to change it to make it more like a massage gel rather than like a, I don't even know exactly how to put it, a slushy. So there will be changes to it, but it'll be probably better overall. And Mark Rayner, tagging off the guy that was 50 doing PE. He started PE at 67, works great, as good as any, better than most. Go for it, stay consistent. And that's kind of the point I was getting to, is like just because it might be slightly harder from like a recovery standpoint, you'll probably see more benefits to it because you're returning to form. Basalis, you're a champion, BD. I've taken a lot of L's this year, so I wouldn't say that, but my Thunder are in the finals. So anyway, thank you for your advice. 2 sets of 10 minutes each of clamping is overwork. Interval 15 minutes between sets. Okay. I don't know exactly how you're doing interval clamping. I would assume you're doing like, this question is a little hard to read. 20 minutes overall of clamping is not bad. That rest period can probably be brought down to like 5 minutes. Because like after like, let's say 5 minutes, those collagen fibrils start to recongeal again, and like you'll actually get a lot more inflammation too. So in general, I would cut back on the rest period and then stick to like, you know, 4 to 5 minute sets for the same amount of time for clamping. Oh, well, it has been 12 minutes, guys, so let me see if there's any more interesting ones. Holy shit. I will have time tomorrow to stream, but I might have Perv on with me. I have to set up with him for that. But save these questions for tomorrow, guys, because I'm losing my voice, and I still got a few other things to do for business. So thank you for your time, and I'll talk to you soon.